Hey everyone, it's Mace1370, and today we're going to talk about the new Caides hunt, which for some reason only goes up to stage 11. Before we get into that though, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, please check the video description below for a link to my Discord. Okay, so the new Caides hunt offers some interesting sets. I'm going to talk about the mobs you have to face first, then we'll go over my team, I'll show you an example fight, and we can go over gear and stuff like that at the end. So this fight has two waves. In the first wave, you fight this guy. You can, for the most part, ignore him. His gimmick is that he'll counterattack you if he's debuffed, and he can also stun you. He has a chance to stun, but for the most part, he'll just die. So then in phase 2, you have to fight Hopeless Caides. He's the main boss. He has a couple gimmicks. The main one is this danger level. It's pretty much like aggro or threat in another game. Essentially, whenever a hero attacks him, their danger level goes up by 1, starting at 0. And he will always attack the hero with the highest danger level. If multiple heroes have the same danger level, it'll randomly attack one of those. You can reset your danger level by using a non-attack skill. So it's important to have heroes that can do that to kind of spread out who the boss attacks. If you have a high danger level, it also increases the damage, it looks like. Yeah. So his other gimmick, let's see here. It'll CR push him when he dual attacks. So here's his other main gimmick, is that he injures whoever he attacks, which permanently lowers their max health. So this is another reason to get him to spread out who he attacks. If he only attacks one target, he can kill them a lot faster because, you know, the stacking health reduction will make them vulnerable to just dying. He has this AoE ability, which he'll use towards the beginning of the fight. It'll hit everyone, and then it'll put decreased speed and restrict on them, which is kind of annoying. You know, the solutions to this are that you can bring a cleanser, or you can bring heroes with non-attack skills that give them additional turns, because then they'll just cycle out of the debuffs. And he also takes reduced damage from Daydream Joker-like effects, so things that deal damage proportional to max health. So that's the boss, and he has these two adds with him in the second phase. Essentially, they're immune to most crowd control, and they will also attack the danger level, the person with the highest danger level, and they'll cause the boss to dual attack when they do that. So those are the enemies. Here's my team. I chose SSB, Top Model Lilica, Challenger Dominial, and Furious. I picked SSB because she offers defense break. She also does decent damage. And I put her on Bloodstone for this fight so that she provides a little bit of sustain. Before I did that, I noticed my squishy units like Lilica or Dominial would die, but just having that, you know, couple thousand heal every so often prevented that from happening and made the runs a lot more stable. Furious, I brought in because of defense breaks. Having SSB as your only defense breaker just isn't enough. There's so many runs where she just won't do it. It's only a 50% chance, I think. So I liked having the redundancy there. It really sped the runs up. Furious also has a non-attack skill, so that'll help him cycle out of his danger level. So he might take a hit or two, and then he'll use his, you know, S3 and reset his, or I guess his S2 and reset his danger level, and then it's all good. So Top Model Lilica, same idea. She has a non-attack skill to reset her danger level, and then she just does damage. And Challenger Dominion, same thing. Non-attack skill and does damage. So that's the team. I did experiment with a variety of compositions, and this one was the most consistent and beat the boss in the least amount of time. If everything goes right, it takes about 2 minutes and 15 seconds to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You know, that's assuming that SSB lands a defense break right away. If I have to wait for Furious to do it, then it might take up to 3 minutes to do the fight. And of course, if all the defense breaks are just constantly resisted, the run could hypothetically fail, or take maybe a little bit longer. It's just unfortunately part of the game design. Because of the 15%, you can't get around it. So alternative heroes you could use, you could swap out Furious for another damage dealer that has defense break, like maybe Blue Lilica could work. The boss doesn't do really enough damage to prevent you from just like running for damage dealers, honestly. SSB I think is pretty good. She could be swapped, you know, with like, I guess potentially a tank that defense breaks, like Tywin or something, could be an option. Any damage dealer that has a non-attack skill like Sirmia could work really well. Mine's only 5 stars and doesn't have Mola. So I think those would all be good options. There's a lot of heroes that could work here. Vivian is another nice one. Vivian would offer immunity for the first stage so that you wouldn't get stunned. Also would give attack buff. She has a non-attack skill. If you have good enough gear, you're probably just going to kill the boss before Vivian will get around to her skill 3 a second time. But I think she would work. So you have options. Kind of the criteria I use when I wanted to run this fight is that I wanted heroes that I had geared for PvP anyways, or like Furious I had geared for PvE, and I didn't want to have to swap around a lot of stuff. So I think you could even change the builds that I have on these units to make them even more optimal for this. But from my perspective, it's just easier to run the fight in 2 to 3 minutes and not have to constantly mess around with my gear. I don't mind swapping an artifact or two. I also put CDOM on Caladra for this, and that's the only stuff I have to change. So then I'm PvP ready when I want to be. So let's go ahead and look at a sample fight. We can go over that, and then I'll show you the gear. Okay, here we can see a sample run. I'm not going to talk about every single part of this, but this is the first phase. So you see here the boss has no debuffs, so he does not counterattack. Furious is going to go and put defense break onto the first wave boss. So now when, well, I guess there you saw the counterattack. Interesting. So he'll counterattack as you put a debuff on. So CDOM will go here, and you'll see him counterattack CDOM. And sometimes he lands a stun, like right there he landed it, so he has a 30% chance to do that. It's really not a huge deal. Like, you can bring an immunity buffer to prevent that from happening, but the boss dies quickly enough that, in my opinion, it's not really super necessary. So Luluka just finishes him off, and we move on to phase 2. And both Luluka and CDOM are very squishy. So you can see that they're still fine going into this phase. You don't need a ton of tanky heroes for this fight. You could theoretically speed tune an immunity buffer to prevent all these debuffs from happening. That would be another option. I elected just to kind of power through them and use units that can turn cycle out of the debuffs. I think the boss dies quickly enough when you just defense break him and then blow him up. So you can see that he has the defense break now, and he's just going to drop pretty quickly. And obviously if these defense breaks don't land, then it takes a lot longer. You can see the danger level above each hero. It's that little golden triangle. Furious there just used a non-attack skill, so he got rid of his danger level. You can see the mobs are causing dual attacks from the boss. And this was a reason that ML Ken was not super great. I tried using him, and the problem is that the mobs attack first. So if they hit him and provoke a counterattack, he'll counterattack the mob and not the boss, which is counterproductive. You don't need to kill the ads.
I will show you.
So you can see CDOM here using a non-attack skill, and her danger level goes away. And then Luluka finishes the boss off. Okay, so let's go over the gear for the units. Alrighty, let's see. I think first up we have Seabell. So I've changed her gear around a little bit. I have her on the effectiveness imprint. I usually use the health one for PvP, but it's easy enough to swap that over. She has decent attack and crit damage, and otherwise is just tanky for RTA. I think that if you were building her specifically for PvE or for this hunt, you would just increase her damage, a lot, and she would do better. I put her on Bloodstone, like I said, just for that little bit of healing. It really made the runs a lot more consistent. So Furious, he's on my Wyvern 13 build, so just some speed and effectiveness, and I think this is totally acceptable. You don't need amazing gear on him. This majority of his stuff isn't even I-90. You don't need it to be. He just has to turn cycle and put defense break on things. I think Song of Stars is the best artifact for him. I don't have enough charms to bring this up to 30 yet, but when it is, it has a 100% chance to put targeted onto the mob, increases the damage dealt. So he's really just an enabler. Then we can go down and look at top model Luluka. She's up here. No, she's dark. She's down here. So here's top model Luluka. She's on my PvP build right now. Ideally, I'm going to swap these over to defense penetration. pieces once I'm able to, so that she can do a little bit more damage. And I would like to get her crit rate and attack up a bit as well, but I guess one thing at a time. I have her on Dingus Orb because it increases the damage of her next skill after she uses her non-attack skill, and also the barrier increases her survivability, so that's, a nice addition to her kit. I think Dingus Orb is a really strong artifact on her, and she's really just here to do damage. And then Challenger Dominial, a pretty standard... that's Champ Zerato. Challenger Dominial is a pretty standard C-Dom. She's a little slow. I would like to get her faster. And then just a bunch of, attack and crit damage. She has too much crit chance right now. She only needs 40% or so, 50%. You could even, use her self-imprint to really lower her self-crit, because she gives herself the crit buff. And then I put her on Caladra for this fight. She's usually wearing Book for PvP, but that's easy enough to swap over. So this will just increase the damage she deals when the boss has a debuff on. So that's it. Like I said, you can use a lot of heroes in place of the 2 damage dealers. Pretty much any hero that has a non-attack skill. Like I said, Surmi I think is a really good option, but there's others. And, those in defense breakers, and you're pretty much good to go. The hunt itself, as, to whether or not it is worth it to do this hunt. I think the new sets definitely have potential. I think the defense penetration set can be really good on some single target damage dealers, like potentially Rylot or top model Luluka. The problem is they only released stage 11 of this hunt, which is a total cash grab and a really crappy thing to do in my opinion, for several reasons. One, nobody has this gear yet, and nobody has the Reforge essences. And you can see I only have 24 of these things, and I've run probably 5 or 6 20 sets of these. So you only get 2 Reforge mats when this drops, and the drop rate isn't that high. And I don't know if you can get 50 drops in stage 11, because I never did Wyvern 11 after the 13 came out. I think you can, but it's probably a low chance. You also don't get very many crafting pieces either. And then the gear that can drop is potentially eye level 70. So as to whether or not you should do this, I would say only if you're whaling. And if you're free to play, I would avoid this until 13 comes out. The amount of resources you're going to have to put in to get usable pieces and then I-90 them is going to be a lot higher than once Caides 13 is out. It's a little disappointing because people want to test this new gear, and I think Smilegate knows that, so they're explicitly releasing this lower stage hunt to try and extract more resources from people who want to try the gear right away. I think that's kind of a crappy move, but that's their decision, I suppose. In terms of whether or not the gear is worth farming, the sets that it offers, I think that, like I said, the defense pen set has potential. I think the injury set also has potential. That's the one that lowers max health. I think it could be good on units like Seaside Bologna. Potentially other units, maybe Holiday Euphine, or units that have AoE abilities. Potentially Dizzy could be good on her, because all of her abilities are AoE as well. And then the last set is, let's see, do I have a piece of it? Yeah, it's this thing. It's the Revenge set. This seems like total trash to me. I am struggling to think of a single hero that I would really want this on, and it's a little debatable. So maybe a healer who, once they have low life, it will speed them up and get them to the front of the line so that, they can get their heal off, potentially. It gives 10% increased speed, as the base ability. Speed set, on the other hand, gives 25%, so you're basically losing 15% speed out the gate, which means that all of the units wearing this are going to start lower down on the CR bar than they would otherwise. And once their health gets low, then this will increase. So if for every 1% health loss, they get an additional 0.5% speed. So they need to be at 70% health to break even with speed set. Once they're below 70% health, then this has more value than speed set. I was thinking, and I think maybe the one unit that this would be good on would be Blue Crow, because he's a unit that you're going to put on Aureus, so he's going to take damage, and he's not a unit that you need fast in the beginning of the game necessarily. I guess it's nice to get defense buff up, but a lot of people run Crow around 190, or 180 right now. So that's an option. And then when he does get low, it'll help push him to the top of the line so that he can get his horse off, potentially. But it just does not seem, worth it to me to sacrifice that starting speed and then the higher speed whenever they're at full health, because you want your units to be full health. It's like, okay, you heal him or something like that with Ruel, and now he's back to being slow again. So he turns cycles even more slowly. Like, it just doesn't seem worth the trade-off at all. So those are my thoughts on the Revenge set. Maybe somebody will prove me wrong. It's obviously possible. Here's the injury one. Like I said, I think this could be interesting on... Or no, sorry, this is the penetration one. This one could be interesting on SSB, the injury set that lowers their max health. I think the pen set actually kept this piece because I'm thinking maybe for effect resistance, ML Ken could be cute. If you totally ignore crit chance and put these types of things like this, maybe an immunity and then an ER set on him, could be pretty good. And stack crit damage, health, and attack, and effect resistance. So that's my thought for him. Let me know if you have any ideas for the sets. I'd be interested to hear them. That's all for now. Later.